Thanks for tuning in. You're watching ARIRANG News. It's 2 p.m. here in Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. The story is making headlines at this hour. Korea has decided to become a founding member of the China-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Seoul now has to decide how much it will contribute. The visiting top U.S. military officer is holding talks with his Korean counterparts in Seoul today. Will they discuss deploying a controversial U.S. missile defense system to Korea? And a critical turn in the Germanwings crash investigation. The co-pilot is now believed to have locked the captain out of the cockpit and intentionally crashed the plane into the Alps. But we begin with Korea's decision on the new China-led Regional Development Bank. Korea will join Beijing's initiative and become a founding member. The move is likely to open up immense business opportunities for local companies in infrastructure building projects in Asia while strengthening economic ties with China. Hwang Ji-hye reports.
The South Korean government says it will join the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank that aims to provide regional economies with the necessary funds for large-scale development projects. And the decision is forecast to largely benefit local construction and telecommunications companies.
The bank will spur a huge demand for infrastructure work in Asia that local companies with extensive experience in construction, telecommunication, and transportation can jump into to meet the demand.
While membership of the AIIB is also expected to enhance South Korea's economic ties with China, many agree it will help Seoul by providing massive amount of funds critical to develop North Korea in case of unification.
South Korea could take a lead in developing the Northeast Asian region, including North Korea, by participating in the AIIB.
Given that this announcement only marks the beginning of this process, attention is focused on how South Korea can secure voting rights that will decide its role in the bank. As Seoul's finance ministry assured that it will do its best to maximize national interest, it added that China is unlikely to get 50% of the voting rights. That due to more than 30 countries deciding to join the bank and more expected to do so. Participants have agreed that voting rights will match with the contributions made, with Asian countries having 75% of the rights. Korea stands as the third largest economy by size after China and India among the Asian nations, but the ministry said it couldn't assure its voting rights will also be the third largest, as many other factors may play a part. Once South Korea is confirmed as a founding member and signs up around June this year, the National Assembly is expected to swiftly ratify the move. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
So how will Korea's decision to join the AIIB influence its diplomatic position with China and the U.S.? Watchers say that it could speed up talks on Washington's potential deployment of its missile defense system to the Korean peninsula. Our Hwang Sung-hee has the story.
Previously, Washington had expressed concerns about the timing of Korea joining the China-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank as a founding member.
So every government can make its own decision about whether the way to achieve that goal is by joining before the Articles of Agreement are clarified, or by waiting to see what the evidence looks like as the bank starts to operate.
The U.S. State Department reiterated its stance on Thursday, saying it's up to each country to join the new financial institution. Washington took issue with the transparency of the AIIB, saying it must meet the standards of other multilateral development banks. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry said Korea consulted with the U.S. on the matter leading up to its decision. He also said Beijing pushed hard for Seoul to join the AIIB as a founding member, bringing up the issue at every round of high-level talks between the two countries. Pundits say now could be the time to start official talks between Seoul and Washington on the possible deployment of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Battery, also known as THAAD in South Korea. Since Korea sided with China on the AIIB issue, they say it will have to consider the U.S. position on the controversy between its two closest partners. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
In the meantime, South Korean military officials are holding talks with visiting Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, Martin Dempsey, on this Friday. There hasn't been an official briefing just yet, but Dempsey and his counterpart Choi Yoon-hee are said to have discussed security matters in and around the peninsula this morning. General Dempsey is now in conversation with Korea's Defense Minister Han Min-gu. Now, prior to the talks, South Korea's military leaders said the agenda would focus on pending issues such as North Korea's increasing nuclear and missile threat and the transfer of wartime operations control from Washington to Seoul. But there's still no word on whether the issue of THAAD has come up during the talks. North Korea claims to have arrested 2 South Korean spies claiming they worked for Seoul's National Intelligence Service in the Chinese border city of Dandong. Pyongyang's state-run Korean Central News Agency reported late Thursday that the men identified as Kim Guk-gi and Choi Chun-gil are being held on charges related to terrorism and bringing in large quantities of counterfeit money. The KCNA added that Choi was arrested last December while Kim was captured in Pyongyang in September. South Korea's Unification Ministry is calling for their release and says the arrests are a violation of human rights. Korea's main rival parties are gearing up for the April by-elections. This will be a good chance for both parties to gauge voter sentiment ahead of next year's general elections. Now, today, both party leaders made their way to the city of Seongnam, one of the 4 constituencies up for grabs. Park Ji-won tells us more.
The ruling Saenuri Party is in Seongnam to hold a training program for hundreds of regional party members this afternoon. Key members of the party leadership, including leader Kim Moo-sung and Supreme Council members, will attend the program and provide special lectures and education to strengthen the Conservative Party's grip on the region. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is also trying to make an impact in the area, holding its Supreme Council meeting there earlier today. After the morning meeting, Liberal Party leader Moon Jae-in reached out to voter groups visiting a community welfare center and the region's textile industry association. 4 constituencies are up for grabs in next month's by-elections, 1 each in Seongnam, Seoul, Incheon, and southwestern city of Gwangju. 3 of the vacant seats are due to a dissolution of the far-left Unified Progressive Party late last year for its pro-North Korea party doctrine and activities. The remaining seat was vacated by a Saenuri Party lawmaker who lost his status due to a jail sentence. This by-election is significant for both parties. The ruling Conservative Party holds a majority in the assembly, so next month's vote will function as a test for next year's general elections and serve as a public evaluation of the incumbent administration. For the main opposition, it's a chance to get a reading on public support for the party's new leadership under Chairman Moon Jae-in, who took the reins in March. The by-elections will be held on April 29th. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012, for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. An arsonist's attempt to set fire to the Korean Cultural Center in Tokyo may elevate existing tensions between Korea and Japan. Seoul has requested a swift investigation into the incident. Kim Min-ji reports.
CCTV footage showed a masked person pouring lighter fluid on the outer wall of the Korean Cultural Center and setting it on fire around midnight on Wednesday. The unidentified person soon fled the scene. There were no casualties or significant damage to the property, except for soot marks on the wall near the center's entrance. The Korean government has expressed dismay over the attempted arson. Officials have called on Japan's foreign ministry to heighten security in the area and asked for a prompt investigation. This is not the first arson attempt on Korean property in Japan.
Back in 2013, a man threw signal flares at the Korean Consulate General in Kobe. The incident occurred while anti-Korean sentiment was strong, following then-President Lee Myung-bak's visit to Korea's Dokdo Island, which Japan claims as its territory. The motive for the latest arson is still unknown, but Japanese police believe similar negative feelings may have influenced the suspect. And the attempt could add fuel to already heightened tensions between Seoul and Tokyo. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the normalization of diplomatic ties between the two countries, but bilateral relations have been thorny, particularly in regards to Japan's interpretation of World War II history. Despite repeated calls for an acknowledgement of the country's wartime atrocities, many feel the Abe administration has yet to show sincere remorse. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Well, it's official now. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will address both houses of the U.S. Congress when he visits Washington next month. The focal point of attention from Korea is whether he will admit and sincerely express remorse for his country's past wartime atrocities. Connie Kim has more.
John Boehner, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, says Abe's address on April 29th will be an opportunity to hear ways to expand economic and security cooperation from a close ally. During his 8-day trip to the U.S. next month, Abe is expected to promote his efforts to revise Japan's pacifist constitution and give his country the right to collective self-defense. In other words, allow Japan to come to the military aid of allies if they come under attack. U.S. officials are hoping to see a breakthrough in trade talks with Japan, in particular in relation to the massive Trans-Pacific Partnership Pact. In Korea, eyes are focused on whether Abe will show remorse for Japan's wartime atrocities during his speech to Congress. The offer to Abe came despite strong efforts by Korean American organizations to stop him. There are concerns Abe would use the podium to promote Japan as a peace-loving nation since the end of World War II, without mentioning the atrocities it committed during the war. The Abe administration continues to deny state responsibility for the country's past wrongdoings. Korea was a victim of Japan's wartime aggression. It's estimated that some 200,000 women, most of whom are from Korea, were mobilized for work in military brothels during the war. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And now the latest on the Germanwings plane crash. Investigators say the autopilot function was reprogrammed to crash the plane on purpose. Citing audio data from the retrieved black box, French prosecutors say the co-pilot deliberately locked the pilot out of the cockpit. Kwon So-ah reports.
The mystery of the Germanwings plane crash may soon be solved, but the more we learn, the harder it becomes to comprehend. Investigators are now saying the co-pilot intentionally put the plane carrying 150 people on a crash course into the French Alps. Data by an aviation tracking website shows that someone reprogrammed the plane's autopilot from 38,000 feet to below 100 feet. That someone appears to be 27-year-old Andreas Lubitz, who apparently was alone in the cockpit before the crash.
The most plausible, realistic interpretation, as far as we are concerned, is that the co-pilot, through voluntary abstention, refused to open the door of the cabin for the captain.
Today, news reached us that this tragedy had gained a new, utterly incomprehensible dimension.
A possible motive surrounds the co-pilot's psychological state, as he was said to have interrupted his flying training for some months. But afterwards, he passed all the tests, including medical checks. Psychotherapists say his act must have been planned down to the smallest detail. In fact, investigations point to the fact that Lubitz was breathing steadily before the crash. So far, officials say there was no indication it was a terror act. People who knew Lubitz say he was an ordinary person whose longtime dream was to become a pilot.
I cannot imagine that he has done it with intention. This does not fit in this picture I have from him.
Many airlines have responded quickly to the tragedy, introducing strict two-person cockpit rules.
Currently, there is not the requirement to have two members in the cabin. After this order, there will be a requirement to have 2 members in the cabin.
Back in the Alps, where recovery efforts are continuing in harsh conditions, special flights and buses are taking the families of the victims as close as possible to their loved ones. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
In other news, an increasing number of Korean businesses are looking to Latin America for expansion and growth. Companies from both regions are attending this year's Inter-American Development Bank meeting, which kicked off in the southern port city of Busan. Our Shin Se-min files this report.
This local steel product manufacturing company says its business has been hurting. Supplying the shipbuilding and heavy machinery industries has become a lot more complicated.
Cheaper Chinese ships fueling the global market have made supplying the naval industry more competitive, but opportunities like this could help my company expand in the Latin American region.
UN is one of the 3,000-plus participants from a total of 48 member nations gathered at the annual Inter-American Development Bank meeting in Busan. Through one-on-one summits, entrepreneurs are making valuable connections and exchanging business practices.
So it's a very vibrant relationship, and also it's quite a high value-added relationship in terms of Korea. The Korean companies are investing and are producing some of the most sophisticated products in the world.
Trade volume with Latin American countries more than doubled last year to $54.2 billion, up from a mere $2.2 when Korea first joined the AIIB. Direct investment to the region also rose 6-fold to $35 billion.
The Latin American market is one that many Korean companies have yet to tackle. Countries there are rich in resources with an annual 6% growth rate. It's the next target market for many Korean businesses, both large and mid-sized.
Although the deals being signed here aren't huge figures yet, the local trade agency believes that it is a progressive first step for many SMEs expanding out to the global market, especially creating trust-building opportunities between the nations. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News, Busan.
While Korea has a number of major film industry awards, independent cinema has often been overlooked until the debut of last year's Wildflower Film Awards. Yesterday, they revealed the nominations for its second year of awards. Our film critic Pierce Conran joins us today with the details. Welcome back, Pierce.
Hi there.
All right, so this award show is not well known quite yet, so what can you tell us about this event?
Well, as you've already mentioned, it's a new awards show. It's in the second year, and it's set up to kind of recognize the achievements of the independent film scene or the art film scene within Korea. Traditionally, there are a number of very big awards shows, such as the Grand Bell Awards or Daejeong Awards, and the Blue Dragon Awards, and things like that. But this is the first one to kind of really focus just on independent film, because we have independent films are very well regarded by local critics and by international film festivals, but they don't fare very well in theaters here, and perhaps that is largely a case of not getting a lot of visibility in theaters because of these kind of vertically integrated studios which control they make the films and they release them in their own theaters, so there's not much space for anybody else.
So what were some of the films nominated for this year's?
Well, there were 21 films in total, and these came from a pool of 90 or so eligible films. And for a film to qualify for consideration, the budget needed to be under 1 billion won, so just under $1 million. And the film had to be released in theaters at some point in 2014. So of those 21, the most heavily nominated film was July Jung's debut, A Girl at My Door, which went to Cannes last year. And that was nominated, of course, for Best Actress, two Best Actress nominations, actually, for Bae Doona and Kim Se-ron. Bae Doona, of course, picked up the Best Actress award at the Asian Film Awards earlier this week in Macau. And then, of course, also for Best Director, Best Actor for Song Se-byuk, and not far behind, there were also Lee Soo-jin's Han Gong-ju with 5 nominations, as well as Moongi's King of Jokgu. So they're both in the kind of Best Director category as well. And Han Gong-ju is a heavy favorite for Best Actress. performance of Chun Woo-hee, and An Jae-hong is up for Best Actor for The King of Jokbu. Further behind, with 4 nominations apiece, were Hong Sang-soo's Hill of Freedom, Jang Ryo's Gyeongju, and Lee Yong-seung's 10 Minutes.
Well, that's a lot to digest. Just out of curiosity, so how many categories are there in the Film Awards?
It's changed a little bit from last year, but now they've settled on what they think are the 10 awards to go forward. So among those, we have the standard awards like Best Actor, Best Actress, Best New Actor, Best New Actress, Best New Director, Best Screenplay,
I
Best
think you need to slow down a little bit there. Right.
I mean, those are all the normal awards.
Okay,
but,
there we go. We can see it on the screen. Yes.
At the top, it's a little different because we have there's the grand prize and the Best Director Narrative and Best Director Documentaries. So what that is, there are actually 7 nominees in each of those Best Director categories, and among those 14, the grand prize will also be chosen.
Okay, so what are the films up for the grand prize this year then?
So in the narrative section, I've already outlined 6 of them that have got a lot of nominations, and the 7th of those is Lee Sung-heel's Night Flight, which got 3 nominations. And then beyond that, there's the documentaries, which also have been having a very strong showing in cinemas recently, but because they're documentaries, they don't tend to get nominated in a lot of categories. Of course, there's no actors, there's no screenplay. But those are A Dream of Iron, Mansion, Non-Fiction Diary, My Father's Emails, My Place, The Controversial, The Truth Shall Not Sink with Seoul, and The Hospice.
Okay, so and you mentioned that these all had to be screened in theaters last year, so they are out on DVDs for people who want to catch the films, maybe?
Indeed, we are well into 2015 now, so these are no longer in theaters, and a number of them are available on DVD, Blu-ray, on video on demand, IPTV, online, and the rest will be coming out soon. However, 6 of the nominated films, which have yet to be determined, will be screening at the Seoul Theatre as part of the Wildflower Film Awards with English subtitles and also with guest visits, question and answer sessions. Those will happen in the 3 days leading up to the awards themselves, which take place on April 9th. So those films will be screening from April 6th to 8th. And there will also be a book which they're putting out. It's the first year of what's called the Wildflower Film Awards Annual, a book which will focus on 11 prominent Korean independent films with essays or interviews, and each have had a specially commissioned illustration for them. And you were also telling me before the show that there are also a Q&A session with the directors in the Film Awards. So how important do you think, in your opinion, how important is this film award in terms of what kind of impact it will have on the local film industry? Well, so far it's already been very well received, and I would say for good reason. Actually, the awards were set up by Darcy Packett, who is a local film critic who's been based in Korea for a long time. And he's been thinking over the last few years that as kind of independent cinema has grown, there hasn't been kind of a body to really truly recognize it. Every so often we see a film get a nomination at one of the big awards, and sometimes a film kind of breaks out. But by and large, the films that do kind of play well overseas or get, top critics lists here in Korea at the end of the year, they don't get any major awards recognition. But we're seeing that now with the Wildflowers, which instead of just introducing films, it's also a way of kind of commemorating them. So as we look back over the years, if the Wildflowers continue to go on for a long time, we can go back and see what were the important independent films of a given year. And of course, for an independent movie director and want to be directors will also get some encouraging, this will also be an encouraging factor for them in the future as well. Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Pierce, for coming in today and sharing your insights. My pleasure, as always.
Hello, Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. You can feel the air getting warmer and warmer by the day, but do keep in mind that mornings and evenings are still very chilly, dropping more than 10 degrees from the daytime highs. Now, once again, we have clear skies nationwide, although there is a little bit of fog clearing up as the day gets warmer. Meanwhile, dry weather continues to linger. Let's check out the weekend forecast. There is rain in store for us surrounding regions of Seoul on Saturday night. It will expand across some regions on Sunday morning. Now let's hope this rain offers a little relief from us, this super dry weather that we've been having. Now, taking a closer look at the readings for today, Seoul will be up to 17 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern regions such as Gwangju and Busan will top to 20 and 18 degrees. Moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 15, Dokdo hits a bit higher at 17, while Mount Kumgang drops low to 8 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's a wrap from us at this hour. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. Another edition of ARIRANG News with me coming up at 4 p.m. Korea time.